Hello world and all who inhabit it, it is I, the Great Saiyaran, and today we're talking about the 8BitDo, yes, it is pronounced Do, Pro 2 controller, and why this is the best controller under 50 bucks for PC, Switch, and mobile. I've been using this controller for months now and I love it. I mainly play shooters, so this is coming from an FPS perspective, but I really love this controller and it's really versatile for a bunch of different games that you may want to play. This controller feels great. It feels solid but not too heavy, and once you understand what's inside the controller, you'll understand why there's that weight and heft to it. First off, there is a replaceable and rechargeable battery pack. These are great because they come with the controller for one, and two, if you want to swap out for batteries or use something else, you can. If this battery pack decides to die, my entire controller doesn't die. I just need to replace this battery pack with some Sony controllers and even the Pro controller from Nintendo. If that battery or if that internal charging mechanism, whatever, if that dies, then your whole entire controller dies. Now there are mods for that, but who wants to go through all that trouble when you can just have a replaceable battery pack? Buttons feel great. I really like the way they feel. They have a clickiness to them. You can hear that? Oh yeah, it's good, isn't it? The sticks are fine. I do like the sticks for a lot of games. I don't necessarily like them for shooters as much because they are just ever so short. So they kind of have this they kind of have this issue with accuracy, and we'll talk about that later on when I talk about how I use this controller personally with Apex and games like that. You have your typical start and select, and there is a turbo button, but I don't have much use for a turbo button, so I haven't used that personally as much as some other people you may be watching their reviews of this controller. And then you have the two back buttons, and these back buttons are great because I personally wanted a controller with back buttons built into the controller. There is the attachment from Sony and with their back button, and it's just so bulky and they're so easy to hit. They don't feel good. It just makes the controller really bulky and just not very comfortable. I got used to it, of course, because I used this controller a lot when I was playing a lot of games on my PlayStation, but I don't like this attachment as much as I like the integrated back paddles that 8BitDo has. Now, one more thing you may notice is there's this little toggle switch, and that is really one of the things that sold me because this controller is for Switch, mobile, so that's Apple and Android and Windows. So yeah, I play a lot of games on my PC with this controller, but if I'm ever out and about, if I'm on a work trip and all I have is my iPad Pro, which is a big boy, like it's about 13 inches. I really like the convenience and the versatility of this controller. Like, this is your all-in-one. You can use this controller for whatever. 8BitDo as a company has always had this modern retro stance. What they've done with this controller is they've really stepped it up with the back button attachments and the software. The software is absolutely amazing. You can map whatever buttons you want. You can map your dead zones to your stick. You can even map your trigger accentuation. I don't know that word. You can set where your triggers actually trigger. It's really cool, especially if you're like me where I do want those fast response times when I'm using my triggers in games, but I also don't want a controller that's only digital. I want analog sticks. There's even this profile button that lets you save up to 3 profiles on PC, Switch, or Android. So if you have a specific configuration for specific games that has maybe specific macros, because this controller can do macros, you can switch between those profiles and just find the profile that works best for that particular game. Now, the software is important for this controller outside of mapping buttons. This is how you get your firmware updates. So there was actually a firmware update that I missed because I don't always check this app, and I was able to update my firmware in about 30 seconds and keep on pushing. Now, if you're someone who has never tweaked software with a controller, the most I had done before this was like I tweaked the settings in a particular game, like on the advanced level. But as far as tweaking the controller's response on a controller level, it's just a completely different game. It's a different ball game because you can get the similar feeling across all of the different games you play. Like if you're playing Halo Infinite and you want to switch to Apex Legends, you can get a similar feel with this one controller, and I think that is awesome. Now, I think this is a must buy no matter how you play because this is the value of 3 or 4 controllers in one. You have Switch, Android, and PC all in one controller. Also, there are built-in back buttons. These back buttons feel great. You're not going to accidentally bump them. They have a little click to them. And the software is great. So you combine all those 3 things plus the things like how easy 8BitDo makes it to mod this controller, or how easy they make it to access replaceable parts, replaceable membranes, and things like that. When you couple that into that type of company with this type of value, it doesn't matter if you only play Switch and you already have a Pro controller. I totally suggest this as a secondary or even, third controller to have around the house. If you're a PC player, you're probably mainly playing keyboard and mouse, but there are some games that play just a little bit better with a controller. So if you're that person who wants to give controller game and go try it, this is a great controller to start with because it's not a huge investment. I mean, let's just say you want to start playing with a controller and you get a $200 Elite controller. You're beating this in value by getting a lot of the same functionality for a fourth of the price. Now, one thing I do wish were better about the controller are the sticks. They're just too short. I don't get the best range of motion. I don't get the best accuracy from them, but they get the job done. There have been some situations where I've been playing Apex and I missed a shot or two instead of hitting the whole clip, and it was that difference between me winning that 1v1 and losing that 1v1. Now, to a lot of people, this won't matter. They can swap out the sticks. They can get some risers. It's worth kind of having to do that extra work for a controller that's as versatile as this. But for some other people, I do want to mention that because you may not want to do all that to your controller, and that may be the difference between you buying this controller and not. When I played on my PS4, I had risers on my controller, and so that gave me a little bit extra accuracy on the aim by giving me just that little bit of leverage. And with this controller, I don't have that. There are mods. I'm just lazy. Maybe I'll do that in a future video. Maybe I'll mod the sticks in a future video, give them some height or something. But as of right now, as far as just using it, it's totally fine. But I do wish that was something that, you know, could be addressed in a future update or a future iteration. Now, ergonomics wise, the 8BitDo loses to the Xbox controller in my opinion. I just feel like the Xbox controller has better ergonomics. And like I said, the sticks are a little bit higher, so that it just feels more natural to use an Xbox controller a lot of the times. But once again, the Xbox controller does not have back buttons, and to get that back button version of the Xbox controller, I'm talking, you know, 170 plus bucks. Now, because of that, I am super curious as to how this controller is going to be in its asymmetric stick Xbox version. That comes out May 31st, and I believe pre-orders are live right now on Amazon. So stay tuned to the channel. We will be checking it out. I think that it will replace this wireless controller for me because most of the time I do play wired, and if you can give me a really solid Xbox controller experience with back buttons for under 50 bucks, I mean, you got me. One last comparison I will make is I do feel like the Nintendo Switch Pro controller is a little bit better in the sticks department. The sticks feel a little bit better. I like the buttons on the Pro 2 a lot more, and I think the D-pad, it's good on the Pro controller, but it feels tiny. I don't know why, it just feels so small for my hands. And the 8BitDo's D-pad, it feels just a little bit bigger. Honestly, they're probably like the exact same size, and it may just be how I'm looking at them, but I think the Pro controller's D-pad is a little bit tinier, so it may feel a little bit better, but because of the size, I do prefer the 8BitDo Pro 2's D-pad. I think a lot of people feel that way, and because of that, I don't really see a reason to get the Pro controller over the 8BitDo Pro 2. I think I went to Target the other day and a Pro controller was like 70 or 80 bucks. This controller, this 8BitDo Pro 2, does everything the Pro controller can do. It feels great. The only thing it can't do is it cannot wake your Switch from sleep. So if that's something that's super important to you and you need that in a controller, I think you may want to stick with the Pro controller. For me personally, I play handheld all the time. I never dock my Switch, maybe once or twice a month because, you know, my kid wants to play Mario Kart, or, you know, there's a new game I want to try with my wife. So whenever I'm taking my Switch out of its grip and putting it into my dock, it's already on. So I did not mind the fact that this cannot wake from sleep because, like I said, most of the time my Switch was not asleep when I was going to use it in that docked functionality. I do use this as my Smash controller over my Pro controller. If I have friends over, I'll usually give them the Pro controller because that's something they're more used to, and I'll use this 8BitDo controller. If I was sitting down streaming or recording any type of Switch gameplay, I was using this controller. Like I said, I like it over my Pro controller. It just feels a little bit better, a little bit tighter. All in all, this is the best controller that you can buy for under 50 bucks. I mean, you have full remappable buttons, you have back buttons, you have a toggle for all your other different devices. You have a turbo button if you're into that. You have macros if you're into that. You have just so much customization and so many options with this controller. It just doesn't make sense that it is this price point, but hey, I'm not going to tell them. I don't want them to raise the price on me and make the next one 70 or 80 bucks. But let me know what you think about the 8BitDo Pro controller. Did this video encourage you to pick up this controller, or is it still a no? Are you still going to get that Elite controller and get that highest tier you possibly can get? Thanks for watching. Be sure to like the video if you liked it, comment down below, and subscribe to see more content from me, like the time I decided to play Kingdom Hearts on stream, or the time I decided to try out Halo Infinite. Again,